Heat clung to Red Mesa like an old fever, pressing down on the town until every plank and every building looked ready to splinter from exhaustion. The air trembled above the dirt street, stretching each second into something long and slow, something that made a man feel like time itself had gone brittle. Folks lingered in whatever shade they could find, on porches, under torn awnings, behind slatted shutters, watching the center of the street without wanting to look like they were watching. But a thing like that draws the eye whether a person wants it to or not. She sat alone on a cut stump, placed there like a monument no one requested, and no one dared move. Bare feet planted in the dust, hands resting still on her thighs, back straight as a fence post hammered into stubborn ground. She did not look at the crowd. She did not look at the deputies standing guard around her. She looked somewhere past all of it, as if her eyes could see something beyond Red Mesa, beyond judgment, beyond the smallness of the town itself. Her clothes, fringed buckskin, beadwork tracing quiet stories down the seams, were meant for moving through wild land, not sitting exposed under the sun like an animal left to be inspected. A single red feather hung from a braid along her cheek. The slightest breeze caught it, made it flicker, proof she was alive, even if stillness had become her armor. 3 deputies hung around her in a loose half-circle, rifles slung but ready. Sweat trickled down their temples. Cut paths through the grit stuck to their skin. Their fingers twitched near the triggers, not because she threatened them, but because something about her stillness made them feel small. Across the street, Rowan Hale leaned against a warped post beneath the saloon's shade, arms crossed. Hat brim tilted to hide the way his pale eyes studied the scene. He'd come for nails, flour, maybe a length of wire if the prices hadn't jumped again. He hadn't come for trouble. Trouble had already carved enough pieces out of him, but the sight of the woman, her silence, her steadiness, hooked into him before he could pretend otherwise. He took in every detail with that careful, quiet manner he'd learned after burying too many people whose faces he wished he'd memorized better. Her cracked lips, the tightness in her jaw, the dust crusted into the lines along her neck, the faint, hungry tremble in her hands she tried to hide by keeping them still. The deputies hadn't given her water. Red Mesa had a long tradition of punishing disobedience by letting the sun decide what stayed human and what didn't. Rowan didn't know who she was yet, didn't know why the town bristled around her like a wounded animal guarding the source of its pain. But he recognized the shape of cruelty, the way a scar recognizes a knife. Every man in Red Mesa came out of the saloon or the store or the smithy with an opinion about the woman. Some whispered she was a thief. Others said she was a witch, a runaway wife, a wanderer who'd spoken wrong to the wrong man. But the rumor that stuck hardest, spoken under hushed breaths, was that she belonged to the Sahani people, cast out for refusing the child the council demanded of her. Rowan didn't care which version was true. He cared about the way she kept her chin level, even as sweat rolled down her throat, the way the deputies avoided her eyes, the way the crowd looked guilty for watching, but watched anyway. He pushed off the post. Someone hissed, "Don't do it, Hale." Another voice muttered, "Ain't worth it." Rowan kept walking. Dust rose around his boots, the street growing quiet in the way a field goes quiet when a predator enters it. He stopped within 2 paces of the stump, letting the heat settle between them. "You been sitting here long?" he asked. The woman didn't lift her chin. Only her eyes moved, sliding toward him slow and deliberate. They were dark, so dark he could see his reflection in them, faint and warped by exhaustion. "Long enough," she said, voice rough. Scraped thin by thirst, a deputy stepped forward. "Move along, Hale." Rowan didn't look at the man. "Wasn't talking to you." That earned a murmur from the crowd, a tiny ripple of tension. But the only reaction Rowan cared about was the one he saw in the woman's eyes. Something like recognition, or maybe relief, so quiet it barely existed. Rowan glanced at the sun. It glared down from its throne, merciless and bright. "They give you water?" he asked. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence was sharp enough. Rowan took his hat off, set it gently on her knee. She studied the gesture like she was testing for trickery. But after a breath, she lifted the hat and placed it on her head, shading her eyes from the merciless light. Rowan walked into the saloon without being told, dipped a tin cup into the water barrel, and returned. He held it out, hands open, as if offering something fragile. She took it, drank slow, careful swallows, letting each bit of water settle into her chest before taking the next. When she finished, Rowan took the cup back. "What do they call you?" he asked. Her gaze held him steady. "Nakana," she said. Or it was. Rowan nodded. "What they cast you for?" She drew a breath that trembled only once. For refusing the man chosen for me. For refusing the child he wanted. For refusing to let their law carve a life out of me. Before Rowan could answer, a door slammed open hard enough to rattle its hinges. Sheriff Martin stepped out, fat with authority and sweat. His face shone red, and the way he walked suggested he'd already told himself 6 lies that morning, just to start the day. "Hale, step back," he barked. Rowan didn't. "She's thirsty. I gave her water." "She's council property," Martin snarled. "She stays until judgment." Rowan looked at Nakana. "You want to stay?" She didn't hesitate. "No." Rowan nodded once. "Then we're done here." Martin's face twisted. "You taking her?" "I'm offering," Rowan said. "Choice is hers." Nakana rose on her own. Her legs wavered just once before she steadied them. Rowan turned toward his horse. She followed without being led. They mounted. Martin shouted something about consequences, law, tribe, punishment. Rowan didn't listen. Nakana didn't look back. They rode out of Red Mesa with dust rising behind them like smoke from a dying fire. The desert opened ahead, wide, sun-bleached, alive with the shimmer of heat. Hours passed with nothing but the wind and the horses' hooves marking time. Nakana held on to Rowan, her grip steady, her breath warm against his back. When she finally spoke, it was soft. "You do not know me." "Know enough," he replied. "Enough for what?" she asked. Rowan didn't answer until the wind died down. "Enough to know leaving you there was wrong." They found a shallow wash by sunset. Rowan built a small fire. Nakana watched him from across the flames, eyes flickering with the reflection of the light. The silence between them was not uncomfortable. It was something growing, something learning its own shape. "They will come," she said. "I know. They will not care who dies. I know that too." She studied him for a long moment. "Then why help me?" Rowan poked a stick into the fire. "Because you didn't choose wrong. You just chose yourself." She didn't smile, but something in her face eased. They slept in shifts. At dawn, they rode again. When Drythorn appeared, a crooked cabin slouched near bent cottonwoods, Nakana dismounted without waiting. She walked to the 3 graves beneath the trees and touched the nearest cross. Her face didn't move, but Rowan saw the reverence in her hand. "I won't disturb them," she said. "You won't," Rowan replied. Inside, she paused like she expected the cabin to reject her. Then she entered. That was enough. The next morning, Rowan found hoofprints circling the property, fresh impressions in soft dust. Nakana knelt beside one. "3 riders," she said. "Maybe 4. "They scouts?" Rowan asked. "Yes, but not from Red Mesa." Sahani. The sun dipped low that evening, and 4 riders appeared on the ridge. Painted faces, spears standing like shadows made solid. They rode into Drythorn like they belonged to the land itself. The lead rider stared at Nakana. "You were cast out. You belong to the dust." "I belong to myself," Nakana said. The man looked at Rowan. "You took what we left to die." "I found someone breathing," Rowan replied. "The council judges at dawn," the rider said. They rode off without another word. Rowan and Nakana worked through the night, sealing windows, reinforcing the door, stacking sandbags in quiet anticipation. Dawn burned red when the council arrived, 20 riders forming a grim ring around Drythorn. An elder approached. "Nakana," he said, "you refused the path. You refused the child. You refused your duty." "I refused being owned." The elder nodded, sadness buried deep. "Then you are no longer Sahani." Nakana inhaled once, sharp, controlled. He looked at Rowan. "Shelter her, and her fate ties to yours." "I accept." The elder raised a hand. "If we see your smoke at sunrise tomorrow, we know your choice." Dust swallowed them. Rowan turned to Nakana. She stood stiff, expression locked. "They cut my name," she whispered. "No," Rowan said. "They cut their claim to you." That evening, rain gathered in heavy clouds. The storm broke. Nakana stepped into it, rain carving silver paths over her scars. Rowan watched her, feeling something inside him shift, like old doors cracking open. "You can go south," he said over the roar. "They won't chase you." "Do you want me to?" she asked. Rowan shook his head. "This place been too big for one ghost too long." She smiled, barely, but real. "I stay," she whispered, and she did. The rain softened through the night, turning from a roar into a steady, gentle patter that tapped against the roof like fingers drumming on a worn table. By dawn, the clouds broke apart into thin gray ribbons drifting eastward. The air carried a sweetness Rowan hadn't tasted since before the drought, a freshness that settled low in his lungs and almost felt like hope if he let it. Nakana rose early, stepping barefoot into the yard, her hair still damp from the storm's memory. She walked the land without speaking, touching fence posts, studying tracks softened by the rain, moving with the quiet purpose of someone learning the boundaries of a life she hadn't expected to have. Rowan watched her from the porch, leaning on the rail where the wood bowed inward from years of weather and weight. The sight of her out there, walking the perimeter of Drythorn like she was stitching herself into it, pulled at something inside him he hadn't realized still worked. A part left dormant for too many winters. She returned to the cabin without looking at him, though she knew he was there. She always knew. Her awareness was a constant thing, like the wind or the sun. It wasn't suspicion. It was survival that had become instinct. "You're up early," Rowan said. Nakana glanced at the sky. "Land is different after rain. It must be red again." He nodded, accepting the truth of it even though he had never spoken those words himself. Drythorn did feel different, like a page that had been erased and rewritten, carrying faint shadows of what had been there before, but no longer bound to it. They spent the morning hauling stones, loosened by the storm, propping up fence posts that leaned like drunks after a long night. Nakana carried stones 2 at a time, her strength surprising even Rowan. He watched the way she moved, grounded and sure, as if every step was a decision instead of a habit. At noon, the sun pushed through fully, bright enough to sting the eyes. Rowan wiped sweat from his brow. Nakana straightened beside him, also squinting at the horizon. "You expecting someone?" she asked. "Not expecting," Rowan said. "But trouble doesn't ask permission." Nakana's gaze drifted south, where the land rolled out in long waves of dust and brush. "Sheriff? Maybe." "He is not finished," she said. "No," Rowan replied. "Men like him don't finish. They just wait for another reason." Nakana set down the stone in her hands with deliberate care. "Let him come." Her voice carried no bravado, just clarity. They ate a small lunch of dried rabbit and crushed herbs. Nakana added something from her pouch, fragrant, green, something Rowan didn't know but trusted, because she'd survived long enough to learn what kept a person alive. When the meal was done, she stood and looked at the sky again. "This place," she said, "it breathes differently." Rowan thought about that. "Land's tired," he said, "but stubborn." Nakana's lips twitched in the faintest hint of a smile. Like its owner. Like its new one, too, Rowan answered. She paused at that, considering the words, weighing them. But she didn't correct him. By late afternoon, the quiet grew thick again, the kind of quiet Rowan recognized from too many years on the frontier. Animals hid in it. Storms gathered in it. Men with reasons to kill moved inside it. He felt the shift before he heard the noise. A low, distant rumble. Nakana heard it too. Her head lifted slightly, nostrils flaring the way a wild animal checks a scent. Riders, she said. Rowan stepped onto the porch, hand drifting to the rifle leaning against the rail. How many? Not Sahani, she said. Horses too heavy, too loud. 6, maybe 7. Martin, Rowan muttered. He didn't curse, didn't spit, just accepted the truth as it formed. Nakana didn't flinch. She retrieved her spear from where it leaned near the door, checking the wood with a practiced hand. Her movements were smooth, almost ritualistic. The dust rose before the riders came into view, thick, angry clouds, kicked up by hooves too eager, and men too convinced of their righteousness. As they crested the ridge, the late sunlight cut their forms into jagged silhouettes. Rowan recognized Martin's wide stance in the saddle, his thick hand wrapped too tight around the reins, his shoulders squared with the forced confidence of a man who'd already decided he had the upper hand. The sheriff slowed as he entered the yard, his horse stomping nervously, ears flicking back. Behind him, 5 men fanned out, forming a loose semicircle. They wore expressions that tried to be brave, but ended up looking like guilt wearing a mask. "Hail," Martin called, voice thick. "You got something that don't belong to you." Rowan stepped forward. "Funny," he said. "She says the same about you." A couple of men shifted uneasily in their saddles. Martin scowled. "She's wanted," he spat. "Council wants her punished. Town wants her gone. You're holding up justice." Rowan's jaw tightened. "I'm holding her life, and I won't hand it over." Martin flicked his gaze to Nakana. "Girl, if you come quiet, this ends easy." Nakana's voice carried no fear. "Last time I came quiet, they bound me for the sun." Martin's face darkened. "You should have accepted your place." "My place is where I choose," she answered. Rowan felt her words settle inside him, with the weight of something true enough to change the air itself. "Enough," Martin snapped. "Bring her." One of his men nudged his horse forward. Rowan raised his rifle. The man froze. A long second stretched thin as wire. Martin lifted his own gun. Rowan didn't blink. It happened fast, the way trouble always does when it's been waiting too long. The sheriff fired first. The bullet struck the dirt near Rowan's boot, throwing a spray of earth into the air. Rowan fired back just as quick, his shot ricocheting off a rock beside one rider's horse, sending the animal rearing. Chaos tore open the yard. A man charged Nakana, rifle raised. She dodged, sweeping her spear upward, cracking the weapon from his hand. He fell backward with a cry. Rowan fired again, grazing a rider's shoulder, the man spinning with a shout. Another came from the left. Rowan pivoted, fired, missed by an inch, then ducked behind the porch post as bullets shattered wood. Nakana moved through the fray with brutal grace, each motion precise, efficient. She struck a horse's flank, to send it sideways, forcing its rider to dismount or be crushed. She spun low, catching another man's leg, pulling him to the dirt. The spear in her hand wasn't just a weapon. It was part of her body, part of her breath. Martin tried to angle his rifle toward Rowan, teeth bared. Rowan fired, hitting the sheriff's hat clean off, exposing his flushed face. Martin snarled and fired wildly in return. Nakana saw the line of danger before Rowan did. She ran. Martin redrew his aim, too slow. Nakana hit him like a stone thrown by the land itself. They both went down in a tangle, rolling across the dirt. Martin swung at her. She ducked, drove her elbow into his jaw, knocking his head sideways. Rowan staggered toward them, blood trickling from a graze along his arm. He raised his rifle. breathing hard. Enough! Nakana froze mid-strike. Her chest heaved, rain-damp hair hanging wild around her face. Martin glared up from the dirt. "You're dead, Hale," he spat. "You and her both." Rowan pressed the rifle barrel to the earth beside Martin's hand. "Leave. Now." The sheriff's men scrambled, gathering the wounded, helping each other onto their horses. They didn't look back. Their fear stunk on the wind. Martin rose, swaying. He spat, then pointed at Rowan. "This ain't done." Rowan stepped closer. "It is for today." The sheriff fled with the rest, leaving Drythorn littered with hoofprints and broken pride. Rowan sank onto the porch steps, pressing a hand to his bleeding arm. Nakana knelt beside him, tore a strip from her clothing, and wrapped the wound with practiced steadiness. He winced. She didn't apologize. She didn't need to. "You should not have saved me," Rowan muttered. "You should not have saved me," she replied. They let the truth sit between them, warm as the lingering heat, and sharp as the smell of gunpowder still hanging in the air. Evening bled across the sky, smudging orange into purple. They walked the fence line together, checking for breaks. The land felt different. More theirs, strangely enough. When they reached the rise overlooking the cabin, Nakana stopped. Drythorn stretched below. Small, worn, stubborn. "This place is not much," she said softly. "But it is not theirs." "No," Rowan answered. "It's not." She stepped to the graves under the leaning cottonwoods. She knelt. She touched the earth. When she rose again, she planted her spear deep into the soil, the wood sinking with a soft thud. "Then here," she whispered. "I stand." Rowan watched her walk back toward the cabin, the evening light catching her silhouette. Something old and painful in him eased, making room for something he didn't dare name yet. Out on the frontier, a person doesn't always get to choose where their story starts, but they get to choose where they stand. Nakana didn't stand with the council that tried to carve her path. Rowan didn't stand with the sheriff who mistook cruelty for order. They stood with each other now, quietly, stubbornly. Two battered spirits choosing the hard thing, the human thing, the honest thing. Drythorn was small, scarred, beaten by too many summers, but it was no longer empty. And out in a land like this, that's enough to build a life worth fighting for. The night settled over Drythorn, with a softness it hadn't worn in years. The sky stretched wide and deep, dusted with stars that pulsed like distant campfires. The land, washed clean by rain and then scarred again by conflict, lay quiet, an uneasy quiet, but a living one. Inside the cabin, the fire burned low, casting a dim amber ring around the room. Nakana stood near the hearth, studying the flame the way one studies a memory. Careful not to get too close, careful not to look away. Rowan sat at the table, rolling a cigarette he didn't plan to smoke. His arm throbbed where the bullet grazed him, but pain didn't bother him anymore. It was just another reminder that he was still part of the world. Nakana turned from the fire and studied him with the same quiet measuring she'd shown since the day they left Red Mesa. She noticed the way he favored his left side, the tension in his jaw, the exhaustion lining his face. "You should rest," she said. Rowan huffed a soft breath, half a laugh, half a sigh. "Rest comes when it wants. Not much I can do to chase it." She stepped closer. "You guarded me through the night after you brought me here. You sat on that porch until the sun came up." "That was different," Rowan murmured. "How?" He didn't answer. He didn't know how to. Nakana studied him another long moment before sitting on the floor opposite him, legs crossed, posture straight. "You kept watch for my nightmares," she said. "Now I keep watch for yours." Rowan's fingers stilled around the cigarette paper. The fire cracked softly. Outside, the wind brushed through the cottonwoods, stirring the branches with a whisper that sounded almost like old voices, talking low. "I don't dream much anymore," he said. "Not since they passed." "Not dreaming is its own nightmare," Nakana replied. He looked up at her then. Really looked. She didn't flinch from the rawness in his eyes. She didn't soften her gaze to spare him. She simply held it, steady as stone. Rowan set the cigarette aside. "You think I'm afraid to sleep?" Nakana didn't nod, didn't shake her head. She just said, "You are afraid to return to a world where they are not." Rowan felt something inside him tighten, then loosen. He swallowed. "Yeah," he whispered. "Maybe I am." Nakana shifted her weight, moving the way someone moves around a wounded animal. Slow, careful, respectful. "Pain is a story," she said. "You can carry it, but it cannot carry you." Rowan looked back at the fire. "Been carried by worse." "And survived," she said simply. "So you will survive this too." He didn't thank her. She didn't expect him to. Gratitude wasn't something you said out loud out here. It was something you lived with your choices. The next morning came with a pale gold sunrise, stretching long shadows across the land. Mist rose from the damp earth in thin ribbons, curling around the fence posts like spirits reluctant to leave. Nakana stepped outside first, breathing in the cool morning air. Rowan followed her, his boots thumping quietly against the porch planks. The world seemed too still, too perfect, like the land itself was holding its breath. "They won't return today," Nakana said, reading the quiet with the accuracy of a tracker. "Town or tribe? Both have wounds to lick." Rowan nodded. "Buys us time." "Time for what?" she asked. Rowan didn't know until he said the words. "To decide what we want Drythorn to be." Nakana turned to face him fully. The sunlight caught her eyes, turning them from obsidian into something warmer. "It should be something that lives," she said. Rowan felt the thoughts settle heavy and true. For years he'd kept Drythorn together, with nothing but habit and stubbornness. But living, real living, hadn't walked these grounds since Leah's laughter faded and the boys' voices vanished into the grave. "Land can't live if it stays broken," Rowan said quietly. "Then we mend it," Nakana replied. She didn't say it like a dream. She said it like a task, a job, a direction. They began with the fence line. Rowan dug out rotted posts, while Nakana cut fresh ones from fallen limbs, dragged in from the wash. She worked beside him under the rising heat of day, their breaths falling into rhythm, their silence something comfortable and shared. Rowan couldn't help noticing the way she planted her feet before each swing of the axe, balanced, grounded, ready for the jolt of resistance. He watched the strength in her shoulders, the precision in her movements. She was not fragile. She was not broken. She was rebuilding herself the same way they rebuilt Drythorn, one deliberate strike at a time. At midday, they paused for water beneath the cottonwoods. The shade was thin, but welcome. Nakana kneeled by the 3 graves. She didn't touch them this time. She just sat quietly, head bowed, hands resting lightly in her lap. Rowan listened to the wind move through the branches above them, listened to the soft rustle of leaves brushing against one another. For the first time in a long while, the sound didn't feel like sorrow. It felt like presence. "They have not left you," Nakana said. Rowan's throat tightened. "Sometimes I wish they would." "Sometimes we are not meant to be alone," she said, "even when we choose it." Rowan wasn't sure she meant him. He wasn't sure she meant herself either, but the words stayed with him as they returned to work. By late afternoon, the fence stood straighter than it had in years. The land looked almost proud of itself, patched and propped and standing taller. Rowan wiped sweat from his brow, leaning on a post. Nakana stood a few feet away, studying the horizon. "Something wrong?" Rowan asked. She shook her head. "Not wrong. Just thinking. About? She took a breath. My people. Their anger is heavy, but under it is fear. Rowan frowned. Fear of what? Fear of change, she said. Fear of women choosing their own path. Fear of men losing the power they believe was born with them. Rowan considered that. Fear makes people cruel. It makes them desperate, she corrected. Cruelty is something they choose. Rowan nodded slowly. You regret choosing to leave? Nakana didn't answer immediately. She walked to the edge of the rise, looked over Drythorn, looked at him, then said, No. I regret that it was forced, but not that I am here. Rowan felt the words hit somewhere deep, somewhere he hadn't touched in a long time. He didn't trust himself to respond, so he picked up his tools and started toward the corral. Nakana followed without needing an invitation. They spent the evening repairing the pen for the second horse Rowan intended to buy someday. When coin allowed, when time allowed, when the world finally steadied enough for planning. Nakana held the board steady as Rowan hammered nails, wood groaning as it shifted into place. Each strike felt like a heartbeat, steady, grounding. The sun dipped low, painting Drythorn in a warm wash of orange and red. Nakana rested a hand on the newly fixed rail. It will hold, she said. Rowan tested it with a firm tug. Yeah, it will. She turned toward him, expression unreadable but open. This place breathes differently, she repeated softly. Because you are here, Rowan said. He didn't intend for the words to come out, but they did. Nakana didn't look away. Because we are here, she corrected. Rowan's chest tightened. Her words dug into the soil inside him, planting something he didn't know how to name. Not yet. Maybe not ever. When night finally settled, they stood together at the porch, listening to the far-off croak of a lonely frog calling from a puddle left by the storm. Fireflies blinked lazily over the field, tiny sparks against the dark. Nakana leaned her shoulder lightly against the porch post. Rowan stood a foot away, hands in his pockets, gaze fixed on the stars. After a long stretch of silence, Nakana spoke. Tomorrow, we mend the roof. Rowan nodded. Tomorrow. And after? Rowan let out a slow breath. After, we keep going. Nakana's voice softened. Together? Rowan turned toward her. The night air settled thickly between them, warm and quiet. Yeah, he said. Together. Out on the frontier, some people spend their whole lives searching for a place where the world can't bend them. Others find that place by accident and choose to stay because leaving would mean breaking something they never knew they needed. Drythorn didn't change in a day, but two people did. And sometimes, that's all a piece of land asks for in return. Someone willing to stand on it without running. Someone to give it meaning beyond survival. Nakana and Rowan stood there now, two souls stitched together by circumstance, choosing each other by something deeper. Something quiet. Something stubborn as the land itself. And out in a place like this, where dust remembers everything, that choice echoed farther than either of them knew.